Welcome to our book study. We are talking about becoming a better procrastinator, something that I think is probably pretty unexpected because we mostly think about procrastination as a bad thing. And we mostly think about how we can stop being a procrastinator. But becoming a better procrastinator is a really helpful framework because there really are two different types of procrastination. One type of procrastination is all about putting off our difficulties because we're afraid of failing, we're afraid of our limits. But there's another type of procrastination that's the recognition that we can't do it all. So life is always going to be about putting things off, but how and why we put things off matters. So we are reading Becoming a Better Procrastinator, chapter 4 here in Oliver Burkeman's Time Management for Mortals, a book that has truly changed my life. We are exploring how liberty and freedom actually comes from embracing our limitations. This is an idea that we don't hear a lot because mostly what we're told is you can do anything you want. Ignore your limitations, overcome them. But you can't live a full life unless you learn to inhabit your limitations fully. And much of the difficulty and pain and the frustration that we feel in life is because we have unrealistic expectations for ourselves and we have a relationship with time that is about maximizing it, productizing it, extrapolating things from it, pulling from it, consumerizing it. And that's not really how time works. But as we talked about in Facing Finitude in last chapter, it's not just that, Facing Finitude, like there's really a way in which we are time, right? Time is so embedded in our very nature that it's something that we can't escape. And so we talked about Geworfenheit, which is Heidegger's word that means thrownness, the fact that we're just thrown into this existence. We don't get a chance to say yes or no. We just have the opportunity to work with reality and have what's called a fundamental yes to reality that says, I will accept life's terms and conditions because I can't actually change them. And I'm going to work with them like water. Or we can have this fundamental no, where we say, I need life to do this. And we try to get life to cooperate on our terms. Trying to get life to cooperate on our terms is just an absolute recipe for disaster. And this is one of the reasons that becoming a better procrastinator is so important. He says here on page 71, and please drop your questions, comments, reflections throughout the chat. Please drop them in the comments section. I'll respond to whatever questions come up here at the end. But he says here, the core challenge of managing our limited time isn't about how to get everything done. That's never going to happen. But it's how to decide most wisely what not to do and how to feel at peace while doing it. We live in a culture that says more, more, more. And no wonder we're burnt out because we don't take the opportunity to do less, to slow down. As I was told when I was in grad school, it's cheesy, but it's true. You are a human being, not a human doing. But our culture in the United States, and actually the whole of the framework of psychotherapy and psychology, is built on this underlying assumption of instrumentalism. And instrumentalism is this belief that things are only good based on what they bring about. The issue with the instrumentalist perspective is that it has no space for things being good simply because they are. Right? So a flower is only good if it brings joy, or food is only good if it fills you up. It has no space to recognize like, hey, a flower is beautiful because it is exactly what it is. And so this instrumentalist perspective where we're constantly comparing the output of things leads us to the same attitude of ourselves. And so we're constantly, rather than valuing ourselves for being human, we are evaluating ourselves constantly. And one of the themes, my kind of tagline is real, raw, and radically human. But one of the themes that's been emerging for me recently, this phrase is being unapologetically human. Being unapologetically human. And what I mean by unapologetic humanity is that we are allowing ourselves to fully surrender to the human condition, to be here with it rather than fighting against it. Rather than resisting ourselves and fighting ourselves, we recognize that, of course, we're limited. We all have flaws. They're going to come out in our relationships. They're going to come out at work. But if we can let go of this sense of needing to defend ourselves, if we can have a fundamental non-defensiveness towards life, we can actually allow ourselves to be here in this moment, fully present. And so that's one of the themes that's emerging as I'm reading this book. And so as he says on page 72, the real measure, because we're limited in this fundamental non-defensiveness, in this fundamental acceptance of our human condition, he says the real measure of any time management technique is whether or not it helps you to neglect the right things. Neglecting things isn't optional. Your to-do list is never going to get any shorter. And the flaw in the thing that we're sold and the thing that we're taught by many time management approaches is if you have the right approach and enough work ethic and enough willpower, then you can get it all done. And that's why we're doomed from the beginning. Because you only have a limited number of time and there's an infinite amount of things to do. So you can't get on top of it. So that's what brings us to this chapter of becoming a better procrastinator. He talks about this story of time management in which, there's this professor and he brings in this big vase and he brings in big rocks and he brings in pebbles and he brings in sand and he asks his students to try to fill it up, right? And they fill in the pebbles and they fill in the sand and then the big rocks can't fit. And then what the teacher does is he does it again, but he puts the big rocks in first, shakes it around, puts the pebbles in, shakes it around, puts the sand in, shakes it around. And the point is that if you put your big priorities first, well, then you'll have space for everything. But it's rigged from the beginning because the professor showed up knowing how much could fit in that jar. The professor showed up with a perspective of limitations. And so the issue is not, okay, if you put your big rocks first, you'll be able to get it all done. The issue is there are very many big rocks. There's very many important things. So what we need to learn how is to be creatively neglectful. We need to be a good procrastinator. And in this, he gives us 3 really simple, straightforward approaches to dealing with this. The first is to pay yourself first when it comes to time. The second is to limit your works in progress. And the third is to avoid the danger of our middle priorities. So let's break down what paying yourself first means. It's a financial wisdom that if you have an income and you wait to put money in the bank till the end, there will not be anything left over, right? We eat everything that's on our plate. It's just a human tendency that what we see, we consume. So in saving, right, we, at the very beginning, it's wise to take money and put it aside into savings. And so this is what he talks about here. He says, if you try to find time for your most valued activities by first dealing with all the other important demands on your time in the hope that there will be some day left over, some time for you to do the things that you love, you'll be disappointed. So if a certain activity really matters to you, a creative project, let's say, though it could just as easily be a relationship, it could be activism in the service of some cause, but if something really matters to you, the only way you can be sure that it will happen is to do some of it today. No matter how little, no matter how many big rocks that we have begging for our attention. The only way to be sure that the important things happen is to do them now. And this is one of the things that has brought me to 2 things. Right now, one of the things that it's bringing me into is reading every morning. I have so many things to do. I'm sure like you, there's so many things to do, so many responsibilities. And I've been waiting till a time to start reading when I have more time. And as I have more kids, as I have a bigger practice, as I have a business, right, there's only less time. There's only more responsibilities. And so instead, I'm just starting my day by reading. It doesn't have to be reading for an hour. It's just reading for at least 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm making that a commitment because being a reader is something that I really believe it nourishes me. It gives me life. It brings more joy. It helps me to reflect. And so I really want to invite you to ask yourself, and I would love to hear it here. You can comment here below. What are some of the things that are actually priorities in your life right now? And are they actually happening? What are some of the things that you would like to do, not tomorrow, not later, not next week, not when things slow down, but right now, here today? I would love to see that in the comments and the chats. And so he brings this into kind of two specific points. And he says, you work on your most important project for the first hours of each day, and then mark your calendar. Actually say meetings that you have with yourself so you don't get disturbed. So the second task is to limit your works in progress. And this one, guys, it's so hard for me. Limiting your works in progress. Because he says there's a danger to begin a lot of things at once. I'm absolutely guilty at charge. I'm wonderful at starting things, but finishing things, it's kind of my kryptonite. And so he says that one of the ways that we approach that feeling is that we initiate a large number of projects all at once. That way we get to feel as though we're keeping plenty of irons in the fire and making progress on all fronts. Instead, he says on page 75, what usually ends up happening is that you make progress on no fronts, because each time a project starts to feel difficult or frightening or boring, you can just bounce off to a different one instead. You get to protect your sense of being in control of things, but at the cost of never finishing anything important. Who can relate to this? I know I can. An email, even right now, yesterday, right? I was starting to write an email for an email list. Because I want to create an email list. I want to be able to share my thoughts more intentionally. And I sat down to do it, and it started being really hard. And I kind of said, "Oh, well, maybe I should do this thing instead. Oh, well, maybe I should try to work on putting groups together," which is also something I'm trying to do. "Oh, maybe I should actually start a podcast," which is something I said I'm not going to do. It's so easy now, especially, there's so many opportunities to do so many things that we just start. It gets hard, and then we run away into something else, and just nothing ever changes. And this is especially true, I find, in the therapeutic world, in the world of growing, in the world of change. I'm really glad to see, it really seems like this is really, really resonating with so many people. It's so important in this world of healing that we stick and we commit to it. You really don't need more information. This right here, social media, what we're on right now, guys, it's perpetuating this belief that more information is going to help you. You really probably don't need more information. We know what we need to do. We just wander, and when things get hard, we go away. And so I'm really a believer that there was advice that I received when I was working out as a young kid in college, and it was really great. And this advice that I received for working out is actually one of the things that I think fits for lifestyle, for wellness, for health, for healing, for mental health. And the advice is that the best workout routine is the one that you stick to. And this gets at this point of when we hop around from one thing to another, we never make any movement. If we want to live a life and make progress in anything at all, we need to learn to tolerate the feeling of making no progress at all. I sat down to write an email for that email chain, and what came up, it was all these feelings of shame, all these feelings of inadequacy, these feelings of fear, and he even says it later on in the perfectionism. And it made me feel little. It made me feel so little. And we flee, we run away, we try to get away from that feeling of littleness, that feeling of shame, that feeling of overwhelm. And so if we run away every time we feel little, that feeling also just kind of chases us down. what you avoid rules your life. And so in order to accomplish anything at all, it really means saying no to practically everything. Because we just can't do it all. And this is where our values are so important. And so when we do commit limitedly and say, I'm going to focus on this thing and I'm going to work through it, what we also find is that we become much more strategic. What am I actually picking? Right? It's really easy for me to say like, oh, wow, I was working on this email list, but I don't know anymore. But then when I say, no, I actually picked that one thing because that's important to me. It's something that I want to develop in. Well, I'm reminded that like, hey, this is my commitment. But it brings us back to this feeling of claustrophobia, this feeling of being a human and just not being able to do it all, this feeling of wanting to feel infinite, wanting to escape our human condition, but finding ourselves here, right in it. So this third point that he makes, the third principle, I think, is especially poignant and comparative. He says the third principle is to resist the allure of middling priorities. I have a fun story about my life here on this one. He says that Warren Buffett was once asked, how do you accomplish priorities in your life by his pilot? And Warren Buffett said, well, first you make a list of 25 things, the 25 most important things you want out of your life. And then you order that list from top to bottom. The top 5 are your priorities in life. And you're going to commit to them with your time. But this is what is kind of unexpected in this. The other 20, they're not your rainy day agenda. They're not things to focus on and think about on the side. The other 20 priorities that are not your top 5, you have to avoid them like the plague. Because these are the ones that are ambitions that are not important enough to form the core of our lives. Yet they're seductive enough to distract us from the things that matter the most. I did this exercise with my wife. And then when I did this exercise with my wife, I came up with 5. And at the time, since then, they've actually shifted around a little bit. But I remember talking to her and I told her, I said, here are my top 5 priorities. I think one was getting a PhD, creating a body of zero cost to consumer health resources, having a practice, 2 other things. And I said to her, these are my priorities. Well, being a husband and being a great father, those are actually my priorities. But those are kind of a given. And she looked at me and she said, John Paul, if those are really your top 5 priorities, to be a good husband and to be a good father, that has to be on your list. Because this is exactly the point of the exercise. You don't get it to do it all. And so you might have all the professional success you want in the world, but the sacrifice might be our marriage, or the sacrifice might be your relationship with our kids. And it was this moment of reality, really just staring me at the face, recognizing, I actually can't do it all. And if I actually think my life, my relationship and my family is the most important thing, those have to be my top priorities. And so I want to invite you to do this practice. And if you'd like to do this practice, you can comment book club. I'll send out the emails. The emails have a recording of this video of reading 4,000 weeks, and they also have some questions and reflections. So you can comment book club, and you'll get added on that email list. Because I'm including that exercise for this week, to list out your top 25 priorities, to order them in priority from least to greatest, to select the top 5, and then to feel that feeling of what it's like to try to avoid the other 20 like a plague. To sit with those parts of you, those feelings of finiteness, that feeling of smallness, that feeling of not wanting to let go, and explore and see what comes up. So one of the other things that he talks about here on page 78 is perfection and paralysis. Procrastination is about fear. It's about avoidance. And if skilled time management is understood as a better of learning to procrastinate well, to put off the things that aren't our greatest priority, then bad procrastination is the opposite. He says here on page 28 or 78, the good procrastinator accepts the fact that she can't get everything done and then decides as wisely as possible what tasks to focus on and what to neglect. By contrast, the bad procrastinator finds himself paralyzed precisely because he can't bear the thought of confronting his limitations. For him, procrastination is a strategy of emotional avoidance. It's a way of trying not to feel the psychological distress that comes with acknowledging that he is a finite being. Much of our procrastination is a matter of worrying that we won't have the talent to produce work sufficient to the quality that we have, that we want, that will fail, that will fall short, that we won't live up to our hopes and dreams. And he talks about this architect from Shiraz who creates the architectural plannings for the most beautiful mosque ever. Everybody wanted to buy it. Everybody wanted to build it. And then after 3 days and nights in his study, he burned the plans up because he could not imagine this perfect mosque that he had designed being built imperfectly. It's so easy for me to do the same, to say, oh, I want to make this video. I want to communicate this idea. I want to write this email. And I'd love to hear if this feels relatable. And then when I sit down, actually do it, and I face the fact that I'm not going to be able to write something on paper as good as it is in my head, I feel that same claustrophobia of being human. When we find ourselves procrastinating on something important, we fail to see or refuse to accept that any attempt to bring our ideas into concrete reality must inevitably fall short of our dreams. No matter how brilliantly we succeed in carrying things off, because reality, unlike fantasy, is a realm that we don't have limitless control. We can't possibly hope to meet our perfectionistic standards. But instead, we can think about it this way. If you're procrastinating on something because you're worried you won't do a good enough job, you can relax. Because judged by the flawless standards of your imagination, you definitely won't do a good enough job. So you might as well start. This year for me has been a year of messy progress. Of saying, the biggest risk for me in life is not taking the risk. It's been a year of trying. It's been a year of falling flat on my face. It's been a year of trying new things. Some of them connecting. Some of them doing quite well. It's a year of expansion and contraction as our lives inevitably are. But there's very many beautiful things that don't exist in the world because we're afraid to make them exist. We're afraid to make them imperfect. And this, to me, aligns with this theme of unapologetically human. That we can actually really, this radical human approach to saying, yeah, of course I'm limited. Of course I'm going to fall short. That's not on that doesn't have to be on me. It's just a fact of human life. Now I can take accountability from that because I don't have to take everything personally. One of the other ways this procrastination or not procrastinating well, this feeling shows up is in not settling, right? We want everything to be perfect. We invariably prefer indecision over committing ourselves to a single path, the philosopher Henry Bergson wrote. Because the future, which we dispose of to our liking, appears to us at the same time under multiple forms, equally attractive, and in our heads, equally possible. In other words, it's easy for me to fantasize about a life spent achieving stellar professional success while also excelling as a parent and a partner, while also dedicating myself to training for marathons or lengthy meditation retreats or volunteering in my community. Because so long as I'm fantasizing, I get to imagine all of those things unfolding simultaneously and flawlessly. As soon as I start to live any of those lives, I'll be forced to make trade-offs, to put less time than I'd like into one of those domains so as to make space for another, and to accept that nothing I do will go perfectly anyway, with the result that my life, it will always prove a disappointment when I compare it to my fantasies. The idea of the future, pregnant with all of its possibilities, is more fruitful than the future itself. And this is why we find more charm in hope than in possession, in dreams than in reality. But once again, the seemingly despairing message here is actually one of freedom. Because until we recognize this, we will continue to fall under disappointment and believe it's our fault. But rather, when we recognize that loss is a given, sacrifice is a given, not having it all, it's a given. When we recognize that as a fact, we can actually experience relief. That you don't have to be all people, you don't have to do all things, you don't have to live up to all your hopes and dreams, and that's not a bad thing. It's just reality. You can actually experience the relief of being exactly where your feet are and allowing yourself to ride the wave of life as it unfolds. And so there's a few other sections here, but I want to just bring it to a close there for the kind of book study here. And I want to welcome your reflections, questions on mortality, questions on your limitations. I'm curious what's stuck out to you today. Again, if you'd like to join the book study, you can comment book study here. I'm not sure if my message is pinned. And also I'm running a interpersonal process group. This is a remarkably powerful tool to help us not just have the insight, but actually move the needle. So much of what I love about this book is that it helps us to recognize that so much of our misery is just because we are not living in line with reality. And when we can let go of these false realities that we believe in, we can actually come to fully inhabit this moment. And we can actually live our lives in line with reality. That's one of the things that I love about group work. You really don't need more information. You have enough information. This social media and this healing space that you're probably in, if you're on my page, it's going to try to sell you more information, give you more information. You don't need more. Consumerism is killing healing. Consuming is not healing. Consumption will give you the idea that there's some knowledge that you can get to that will bring you healing, and it won't. If you want to move the needle in terms of being present, in terms of living a full life, you need experience. Because healing doesn't happen in explanations. It happens in lived experience. And that's exactly what the Processing Presence group is about. So please DM me, PP26, if you'd like to work with me in this context of learning to be more present and recognizing our fears. But I'd love to hear the questions and reflections that you have throughout this book study here today. And you can comment book study if you want to join the email list for the book 24 hours, 24,000 weeks, time managed for mortals, sorry. Let me see here what we have here. So questions and reflections. Yeah, this makes so much sense to me. Also guilty of doing too many projects at once. I've gotten much better at resting and slowing down now. Priorities in my life are that I already do. Lots of time with my children, focus on passion projects like Baby and Me support groups at my rural community. I love that, Dr. Maria. That's awesome. Nicole says, I never finish because I always think maybe there was something I missed. Yeah. And the inevitability is there always will be something that we miss. Oh my gosh, we're entirely on the same wavelength. One of my struggles as a presenter is knowing when it's okay not to have all the answers. I am enough. That's okay to say that I don't know. That's right. That's right. What other questions, reflections? I'd love to hear it. Here we go. PP26. So a lot of people interested in the group. You can send me a DM, PP26, those of you that are interested in joining group. Again, group is one of the most powerful tools that I know for healing, because it's not just hearing something from an individual person, like a coach or a therapist or a mentor. You're actually receiving validated feedback from a small, intimate group. And what I love about these groups is that it's really an ideal group if you actually want to understand yourself, because all the people in the room are seeing you and interacting with you. So it's a really, really powerful thing. So you can DM me PP26 if you're interested in joining that group. Did not finish because I want to be perfect. That's right, me too. And it's helpful too to ask when we're looking at imperfection and perfection. I welcome any questions you guys have, whether it's relating to this or anything else. That oftentimes what we're afraid of isn't failure, it's what we take that failure to mean. We can have these beliefs about ourselves that can go very deeply, that bring us to believe that that our worth is based on what we do. Our worth is based on our success and our failure. So that can be a great impediment, because we're afraid that if I don't do well, it means that I'm no good. When the reality is that you just can never, ever be perfect. And so if the standard is perfection in your mind, you're never going to reach it. And this is one of the biggest things that I say to new therapists that I work with as I'm mentoring new therapists in supervision, is I let them know that one of the most important things they can do is to let go of their unrealistic expectations for their performance. If you think of anybody in any frame of work that's successful right now, and think about the best writer alive, they began one day, and they were a beginner just like you. And that's a really helpful remembrance. A comment here of being aware of aspects of consumerism in a lot of aspects of life. The bit about information and knowledge consumer is an idea, a new choking discovery. Yes. Yeah. We come to believe that more information will make us feel better, and it doesn't. It just overwhelms us. We are absolutely overwhelmed with helpful information. You don't need a new theory. Find one theory, find one approach, and practice it every day. Before you add more information, practice what you already know. Again, this is why the Practicing Presence group is so important. It's because it's practicing presence. So if you want a place to actually practice these things rather than just talk about them, to actually do them in action, that's what it's about. So you can DM me PP26. Something I heard that helped me take a step for a habit I wanted to develop, which was think about it more than doing what you want makes it harder. Stop thinking about how bad it will go and just take the first step. Yeah, I like that. And I think this is really helpful when we think about, who am I becoming in the process? Rather than the outcome, we turn to our values. Demon, if you DM me PP26, rather than comment, DM me PP26, I'll send you that information. Haven't made my priority list. You make me think about stoicism, keeping things simple. Like one shadow part that wants to do everything, idealizes a version of myself, perfectionism, learning to be humble. That's right. The perfectionism, the sense of wanting to do everything perfectly. This is actually one of the things that Karen Horney, who was a psychologist that broke from Freud, said. She believed that we have these two images, an ideal version of ourselves and a devalued version of ourselves. The ideal version of ourselves is perfect and can live up to our fantasies. And the devalued version of ourselves is filled with shame and is incompetent and can't do anything. And both of these are untrue because they're both extremes. Now, Karen Horney said that when we are having a hard time mentally, it's because we vacillate between both of these. We start something and we have this ideal, I'm going to do this perfectly. And then when it doesn't plan out, we turn into devaluing and we beat ourselves up rigorously. And then we try something again, we think we're going to do great. And so we're left going back and forth. And we also do the same thing to other people. We idealize them and see them as better than humans can possibly be. And then when they inevitably don't live up to those standards, we devalue them and say they're terrible. And so this oscillation leaves us absolutely just totally overwhelmed. So the key here is steadiness, right? Realizing a more realistic perspective that you're not perfect and neither am I. I will always let you down because I'm human. But I can take accountability for letting you down. I can apologize and I can make it up for you. A couple more questions here. We've got just a few more minutes. So asking more about this group. So the practicing presence group that I'm running, it's a 12-week group and it runs for 90 minutes. And this is a group for people who have a lot of awareness, who are very open-minded, but who just feel like they're not as present as they want to be, who are all in their heads, who feel like they know the information, but who actually want to move the needle. And it's a group where we learn by being present to each other. So it's kind of like an experiment. We get into the group, it's of 5 to 8 people, and then we explore what comes up. Our fears, our difficulties. And we are actually practicing being in the moment. Because one of the things that keeps us out of the moment is that we have these relational patterns that we've learned to keep us safe. And those relational patterns actually keep us stuck, not in the present, but in the past where we were hurt. And then they actually tend to recreate the past. So what we do in this group is we recognize when those patterns show up. We explore the fears that keep us stuck, that stop us from being present. And we work through that. So it really is a practice group. If you're tired of all the information, or if the information just isn't moving the needle and you need the experience, that's what this group is about. So you can DM me, PP26, if you want to learn more. We can hop on a consult call and set something up. We just got a few more minutes here. So how do you defeat that urge to do nothing? I don't know that defeating that urge to do nothing is helpful. I actually think that what can be more helpful is if we can turn towards the urge to do nothing rather than antagonism with actually a genuine sense of curiosity. What is this urge to do nothing trying to protect me from? How does it show up in my body? And I've got a guide on my website that's free that would be really helpful there. Can you elaborate on a step of keeping things simple for people who are scared of bringing their ideas and work to life out of fear of mediocrity? Yeah, I think one thing is actually just exploring that fear of mediocrity and seeing what it's trying to protect us from. Because I actually don't think that, I think mediocrity gets a really bad rep. A simple life, and maybe it's because it's not mediocre. I think what we think of is we confuse simple, like we think of average as bad. But the fact is that a meaningful life can be average, and that's okay. But here, guys, we are going to wrap up because I have to run. It's 1:00. So next week, we are going to read The Watermelon Problem. And that's pages 89 to pages 123. The Watermelon Problem, 89 to pages 123. Here in 4,000 weeks, that's upside down, 4,000 weeks, time managed for mortals. This book changed my life. I think it can change yours too. And if you want to talk more about group, I would love to talk to you about it. So send me a message, DM me, PP26. We'll hop on a call. Most importantly, take good care. And I would really invite you to reflect. What are your fears in life of saying no to the things that you want to do, but you just don't have the capacity for, you don't have the space for? What are your priorities? And what will it feel like to say no to those things that you really want to do that are not your top priorities? So thank you so much for being here. And I just wish you all the best.